My name is Christy Alosio, and I am a counselor at Healing Hearts of Indy in Indianapolis, Indiana. We specialize in individual, marital, family, and group counseling here at Healing Hearts of Indy. Today I want to talk to you about why can't I be heard by my husband. This is oftentimes one of the main issues that comes up when a couple first sits down with me and I ask them, how I can help them. A lot of times, very frequently, I have a wife saying, I feel like he doesn't hear me. Not that he's not listening, but I say things and he doesn't change things that I ask him to change. I ask him to do things around the house and he doesn't do them. Or frankly, I ask him about something and he just forgets. So this is something that I feel like brings a lot of couples into counseling to begin with. Obviously it might be coupled or associated with some other issues that can go along with that, but a lot of couples tend to have that come up as one of their issues when I ask them how I can help them. And one thing I do want to preface when talking about this subject is this is not just about wives not being heard. I have lots of husbands that come in and sit on my couch and have the same feeling of help me, my wife doesn't hear me, she's not listening to me, same kind of issues. Just for ease sake of not having to say he/she, I'm just going to say what, this in the wife's position of I can't be heard by my husband, but this can go just as easily the other way. Probably happens more where I see more wives come in with this issue than husbands, but I do see a good number of husbands that come in and feel the same way. So just want to kind of add that disclaimer in. So when somebody says, why am I not being heard in my relationship, one of the first things I always tell people is this issue is 50-50. The wife loves to sit there and say, he doesn't hear me, so he's 100% of the problem, fix him. Instead of being able to say, wait a minute, I have a part in this too. So number one, if you're feeling not heard, it's 50-50. Each of you guys have work to do to change that dynamic, and each of you have helped that dynamic get to where it is. So let's start with the husband's point of view. What is his 50%? Why is he having such a hard time hearing you? And remember, this could be the wife too, but I'm going to make it about the husband in this instance of why is he not hearing. And one thing I always like to bring up is people are the way they are for a reason. And that is such a big part and an important part of counseling is us to get to the root of that. Because if you can, at the end of the day, really understand your partner and understand where they're coming from and why they are who they are, it takes the pressure off of you. Like he's not, not listening to me because he's mad at me or there's something wrong with me or he's unhappy. Some of those things might be true, but that's not the main root cause of why he's not hearing you. It's been something that's been there for a long time. So, we'd like to talk about backgrounds. Why is somebody capable of not listening to their spouse? So, I'm going to use some client examples. I always change them up, so they're, a little different so we can't identify anybody, but the main premises are the same of people that I've actually worked with. And, I worked with a guy, in his childhood, his parents got divorced and his dad moved away, so he's primarily left with his mom. And she instantly remarried a man that had children and had custody of the children. And the wife just kind of just associated with that family and kind of felt like her new family was her new husband and the kids. And the son, my client, just kind of got left behind and had to live in a different area of the house and had to figure out how to get himself to school and to practice and those kind of things. And so then he sits on the couch with his wife and, she's like, he doesn't hear me. And why is that? And part of that is, what was that guy going to be other than somebody that was more counter-dependent and somebody that was more just independent to begin with? So what he learned growing up of the way a family works and the way the relationships work is I just kind of do my thing, I take care of myself, I meet my needs, and I'm responsible for me. And so then that guy grows up and gets married, and I think there's somewhere in people's minds where they think that all of a sudden then that guy's going to be a different guy, and now all of a sudden he's going to hear, and totally opposite. The opposite is true. He's going to struggle with those things because they're not things that he knows. As simple as they seem for some people who have learned that, well, who wouldn't know you need to listen to your spouse? We have to learn these things, and it's not about not listening. It's just more about his mind works in a way of what do I need, how do I get my needs met, how do I get what I want, because that's what he's used to. So that'd be one of the first things, is looking at that background and kind of going back and dealing with some of the issues surrounding that. so that he can see kind of some of the areas that he's missing. And you can't make something better unless you can see why it's there to begin with. So that's number one. Like, let's look at the let's look at the background. I've worked with other clients who have had moms that have been really overly smothering. They do everything for them growing up. They never have any chores or responsibilities. And that's, can also lead to this sense of kind of obliviousness in a relationship, not hearing, not being helpful, because no one's ever taught that person how. You take that guy and you put him in a marriage, and he's pretty much still going to be that guy. Marriage doesn't really change who people are. So, background is something very significant to look at. The second part of why might the husband be this way is simply remember that we teach people how to treat us. So in this case, a lot of times when women first get into these relationships, they want to be overly loving and overly giving and overly doing, because they think it's how to show love. In their mind, they're like, that's how I show love, that's how I feel love, so in return I'm going to give that to my partner. And so then from the beginning, they're kind of setting up this dynamic, or setting up the scenario of, I'll take care of it, I'll do it, you don't need to hear me, you don't need to help me, I've got it taken care of. And then, but that does weigh on a person. It works for some years in the marriage until that wife finally, the kind of frustration and anger may slowly start to grow, until she gets to a place where she is like, oh my goodness, like I can't do this anymore, this is really frustrating, I need this to change. And the husband's kind of over there like, what? It's always been this way, I don't understand why it needs to be different. So that's a hard dynamic to change. So that's another part is, you have to look at how the relationship was designed and set up in the first place. And so we kind of tend to live that, this is how it is, this is how it's set up, so this is the way that it should be. So those are kind of some things that we would think of along the husband's point of view, or the person that's not hearing the other person, their point of view. So let's look at it now from like the wife's 50%. What's going on with her? Why has she kind of taught the husband that this is how she should be treated, or this is how the relationship can go? So one, if you are in a relationship and you're having a hard time having a voice, you have to look back and say, where along the way did I learn not to have a voice, or that I shouldn't have a voice? One of the ways that I see a lot is it's modeled. I think, my generation, a little bit older generation, maybe a little bit younger, but, just around this time, a lot of us had moms who had this type of relationship where the dads worked, the moms stayed home, the dad had more of a voice in the marriage, was more patriarchal. And so that's just kind of what they saw, is that this is the way relationships work, is that the man has the voice, and we're gonna, that's how we then recreate our marriage. And but then again, that gets painful after a while if you feel like you don't have a voice, especially when things have changed a little bit and marriages aren't always like that anymore. So for a lot of women, it was just simply something that was modeled to them. Don't have a voice, don't take as much of the power in the relationship. But again, eventually that works for a while, but it does get painful. And another, there could be several reasons why somebody may feel like they don't have as much of a voice, or they shouldn't have as much of a voice. But one other example that comes to mind is growing up with a parent that's angry. A parent that kind of has explosive anger, usually tends to be pretty intermittent, where you're not really sure what's going to happen, but they blow up. And for a kid, that's really scary, and it's really hard to deal with. And so as kids, kids a lot of times try to find a way, like, how can I make this not happen? How can I take more control over what's going on with me? One of those ways is to be very quiet, to not rock the boat, to be really good at things, to just stay even keel. If I can, keep less stress or less issues away from my angry parent, then they're less likely to explode on me. But again, that is creating this sense of, it's not about me, what I want is not important, it's all about like kind of controlling or almost like manipulating somebody else's behavior. And so then again, how is that woman going to grow up and be in a relationship? She doesn't just come out of her childhood like, oh, change that, perfect, great. We carry those same issues with us later on in life. And so for her, she's in that same place where she's like, I'm just going to try to kind of control and manipulate others' feelings and emotions by how I act. So those are just, that's a really brief summary of why this issue could be there. So now let's talk kind of like the quick and dirty of how would we resolve that. And of course this is very quick because this is an ongoing process. But one of the, for me there's kind of three things that need to go along with that. And the first is you need to know why the issue is there. We need to do what I just did of going back and figuring out the patterns based on your individual situation. We need to get into a real detailed place of why is this going on. Number two, we have to get out of the feeling of victimized by the situation, to say this is his fault and he's put me here, and if he would just listen, and if he. Number two, we have to get out of that mode. We have to say, first of all, we have to say we, and we have to say I. What do we need to do to make this relationship better? And what do I need to take accountability for of why this got here? And what do I need to change to make myself happier in this relationship and to make the relationship better? It's real easy to kind of put it off on somebody else and say, if this person would, then blah, blah, blah. But also, again, going back to the 50-50 piece, what is our 50%? And how do we make that better? And how do we take ownership of that 50%, good, bad, or ugly? And then the third is that's when, with the first two, then we need to start changing the dynamics. And that one sounds really easy. Just, we're going to start changing it. Okay, you do this and you do this. But the problem is change is very uncomfortable, and it creates it's probably going to create a lot of tension. I'm very honest with couples when I say things tend to get a little worse in situations before they get better, because you're changing up the relationship dynamics, which is always going to cause a little bit of disruption in the relationship and what's going on. And some of that changing the dynamics is learning to have better boundaries, learning to have a better voice, learning to maybe have some appropriate healthy anger. All of those things will help us change the dynamics that we have in the relationship. So this is kind of the quick synopsis of why you may not be being heard by your spouse. Obviously this is a really kind of brief summary. There's lots of other different reasons, and each person's situation is very individualized. And so what I'm here to do is to help couples kind of put those pieces together and see why it's happening and see why it's there, and then help them deal through the uncomfortableness that they feel with change. So if you have any questions on this video, if you'd like to make an appointment, if you have something specific you'd like me to talk about on a future video, please contact me. My email address is Christy@healingheartsofindy.com. That's CHRISTY@healingheartsofindy.com. Thank you.